Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's CPMC's webinar on tablets in prison, unlocking new opportunities. My name is Father Dustin Fedden. I am the vice chair of CPMC and a regular kind of face for many of you for different educational purposes and the town hall meetings that we've been having over the past couple of years here at CPMC. I'm a priest in the Diocese of Pensacola, Tallahassee, and executive director of Joseph House, a residential community for men leaving prisons and jails. And as a religious volunteer in prisons and jails, I can tell you I am so looking forward to today's webinar, as certainly since the pandemic, I've become more and more familiar and hearing a lot of stories about men on the inside and their use and so much of the value that they've gained from tablets and this kind of new phenomenon of programming in prisons and jails throughout the country. I would like to begin, though, as we always begin with these webinars, to take a moment to open us in prayer. So let us begin in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Father in heaven, we thank you for the gift of your presence this day. We know that you hear us, that you always hear us. And on this feast day in our church, we recognize the gift of St. Maximilian Kolbe, a patron to all of those that are incarcerated. We thank you for the gift of his witness to show us how to bear witness to the love and mercy that comes to all of us each and every day through your Son, Jesus Christ. So we pray, Father, that you would bless us this day, all of the ministries, organizations represented in today's webinar, that you may give us a sense of your presence. We pray all of this through Christ our Lord. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Well, again, welcome for those of you that have just joined us to today's webinar, Tablets in Prison, Unlocking New Opportunities. Today's webinar, we will be exploring the topic of the use and the value of tablets in prisons and jails throughout our country. And today's webinar, we will begin with, we've got two presenters, John Timpone and Megan Tobin. John Timpone with Edovo and Megan as well. John Timpone is the Chief Creative Officer at Edovo, where he has helped expand technology and curriculum access to incarcerated people for over a decade. He leads the creative and content initiatives at Edovo, working to bring more impactful content, curriculum, and people outside of carceral walls to the millions of incarcerated people in the US. Megan Tobin, also at Edovo, is a seasoned instructional designer with a rich background in collaborating with innovative organizations to create corrections-ready, digital and self-paced vocational, educational, and rehabilitative content for incarcerated learners. A thought leader in digital pedagogy, she is dedicated to pushing the boundaries of instructional design and serving hundreds of thousands of incarcerated learners by integrating emerging technologies and innovative teaching methods to improve educational outcomes. And so at this point, I will turn the mic over, so to speak, to John Timpone. John, welcome.
Thank you, Father Dustin, and thank you everyone for attending and being here today. I see we got 72 participants thus far, and it's great to see so many people interested in learning more about how you can use existing technology and reach more incarcerated people, maybe in the jails or prisons in your communities that you're looking to reach, or looking to maybe expand beyond that and reaching folks nationally as well. So to what Father Dustin mentioned with us over here at Adovo, we are a nonprofit organization whose mission is to bring educational, vocational, rehabilitative content to incarcerated men and women throughout the country. We do this by having our application that's provided at no cost to incarcerated people, bring forward all the materials from folks like yourselves. And so we've been at this for over a decade now at this point. And in this call today, we're going to go through a few different topics. And so we're going to be discussing a little bit of an overview of, again, what we do here at Adovo and what Tablets and Corrections looks like, and giving a quick lay of the land for those of you who might not know what's been happening within jails and prisons. We're going to talk a little bit about our Adovo Learn platform, which is what incarcerated learners access every day. We're going to touch a little bit on how data analytics works and how you can look to get data to how learners are engaging with your curriculum, and even look to figure out how and where you can get safe responses from learners to your programs outside of correctional walls to help further engage with incarcerated learners. Megan's going to dive more specifically into the curriculum and content side, talking about our editor platform. And you'll, of course, hear after our presentation from Sister Dolores, who's been a power user, I'd like to say, of our platform for a long period of time, as well as hearing from Sister Christina over working within the Missouri Department of Corrections. And we'll talk more about how we can look to adapt your curriculum to our platform if you're looking to do that, or other ways in which you can look to get involved, bringing your materials again to a national incarcerated audience. So a little bit about us here at Adovo. Again, as I mentioned, we're a nonprofit organization whose mission is to help everyone connected to incarceration build better lives. So thus far, we've reached 775 plus correctional facilities. And Megan, if you want to jump to the next slide, we can show some of those numbers. When we're reaching about 600,000 incarcerated learners on a daily basis. We've had huge growth this year. We've been very fortunate to get our application into the various jails and prisons through the existing tablet providers that are providing them. So that's really the way in which this is operating today. There are historically the phone companies are the ones now distributing tablets in jails and prisons. And we are working with those various different companies to provide our application on their tablets, again, at no cost to incarcerated learners. That's always been at the forefront of what we do, and it always will be a core tenet of how we operate as a nonprofit in ensuring that we can provide equitable access to everything that we provide to incarcerated men and women. We're in about 45 states as of today. Some of those are just a few county jails or a few prisons. Some have statewide deployments where we're in almost every single county jail and almost every single state prison in a given state. So it varies from facility or from state to state. And we'll talk more about how you can get plugged into that information to see where we're currently live and how this is looking to grow throughout the rest of this year. By the end of this year, we're forecasting to be at about 1,000 correctional facilities launched with Adovo. And that's inclusive of a few more DOCs, Departments of Corrections, launching with our platform. And we're going to continue doing that into next year until hopefully we have every incarcerated person with access to our platform so that we can help be the bridge between what you all are all doing on the outside to reach more incarcerated people on the inside, again, whether it's for a specific jail or prison you're working with, or if you're looking to go national and reach people across the country. So that's a quick brief on what we do here at Adovo, but we'd like to show you real quick with the time that we have here, a little bit about our learner platform and talk about what this looks like for an incarcerated learner, and then get into some of the other specifics as well. So as Megan brought up here, this is our main Learn application that learners would be able to access. Typically, learners are accessing this on an Android-based tablet. That's about 99% of the ways in which we're getting into jails and prisons. We have a web-based app for anyone who's interested in some of the technicalities behind that. So anybody who has access to an internet connection, they can access our application, and we provide that access to incarcerated men and women post-release if they so choose. So when you're thinking and looking at this application, picture it probably on a smaller screen size, but it's going to be representative for what learners would go through. Within here, they have three main areas that they can dive into. Content library is going to be where all of our materials are located. That's going to house all the curriculums and all what we would call learning resources on our platform. Learning paths are going to be structured pathways of learning that would help learners reach higher levels of outcomes. And those are going to be like what's being showcased here, different ways to help on GED or HiSET or high school equivalency, preparing for college, maybe working within specific areas for help, whether that's anger management or parenting while incarcerated. We build learning paths custom for different facilities and sometimes for different providers depending on the need. And then the last section is the My Adobo section, which is going to be sort of the library of what a learner is interacted with. It's going to house their certificates, which they get for completing coursework, as well as their learner transcript, which is going to be a collection of all the curriculum that they have completed. We see that this learner in this demo account, Megan Scott, doesn't have too many completions, but that's okay. Learners, we get about, I'd say about a few thousand people reaching out to us, family and friends, outside support network, attorneys, reaching out to us to request these learner transcripts from incarcerated people to then be utilized for potentially parole boards, for probation officers, for potential employment post-release, lots of ways in which those transcripts are utilized. If we jump back into the discovery section, we're going to go through real quick some of the main types of content, and then we'll talk briefly on the data side, and I'm going to hand it over to Megan after that, just so we can be mindful of time and give some time to both Sister Christina and Sister Dolores and have some time for Q&A at the end. So as Megan's showing here, we have a bunch of different materials within here. Really, there's different ways in which we organize content, different ways in which content's categorized, and different ways in which learners can essentially engage with this material. The first piece I'm going to go through is the course, which is kind of the ultimate piece that we like to look at. And if we go into, let's say, our Rising Strong course, this is a substance use course that we've had built up. This is a way that you can see quickly a course that's built for a learner to be able to match course outcomes, have those outcomes tie into lesson outcomes, that then we can demonstrate positive success from beginning to end of that curriculum. Ideally, we're utilizing courses for outcomes with either correctional facilities or with outside organizations that can award sort of some kind of accolade to those courses, whether that be early release credit, whether that be college credit through proctored exams, GED or HiSET or certifications from more job employers. And all these materials connect together, as Megan's showing off, in different materials that you can combine together. Text-based items, reading-based items, video-based items, audio-based items. And all these are going to be a composite together to, again, tie back to those lesson objectives and tie back to those course objectives. They're ultimately towards the end, if you kind of jump ahead maybe a little bit, Megan, to some of those multiple choice questions, open response quiz questions, reflection questions that learners can go in and they can submit their responses to. These, as Megan will show in the editor, can be graded in different ways, can be not marked for grades, can be utilized for more survey style questions or kind of just gathering feedback and input. So there's different ways in sort of how you can measure, again, the success that a learner has with going through the curriculum. And ultimately, again, like I mentioned before, we're looking to map this back to lesson objectives and course objectives to have a more holistic curriculum that a learner can show that progress through, that again, ideally we can connect back to outcomes. So there's a lot more we can go into on the courses side, but I'm going to pause that piece for now and jump over to one of our interactive resources and talk through a way in which you can use our same course editor tool to then leverage that for something that's a little bit more interactive for a learner. So we could think of this News Inside publication from the Marshall Project, if anyone's familiar. They used to publish these through paper-based and send them out. They still do. And we wanted to help support the Marshall Project digitize this and get this out to more incarcerated men and women. So we've taken their News Inside publication, taken their digital PDF, and we put this on the platform through the same course environment so that a learner can jump into one of these, read it as they normally would, and interact with some of those questions that they would otherwise rip out from their paper-based product. And then instead of mailing it in, they can submit their responses back to the Marshall Project digitally. So in every one of these issues, like Megan showed, they have a reader-to-reader section where they're asking incarcerated people specific questions that they'll use their responses in future publications. So this one's really talking about somebody being transferred from one prison to another, maybe from jail to prison, looking to get incarcerated people's feedback and opinions about how that worked for them. So instead of, again, that being a paper-based piece that learners would have to rip out and mail back to the Marshall Project, we've instead had a question here at the bottom that those same learners can then submit that response to, that we can then make those responses available through a de-identified dashboard to protect their privacy if they're not looking to permit to share out their personal information. We can still provide their information, the response, I should say, to the Marshall Project and have that be something they can then look through and use those in future publications if they wish to. We've seen other organizations utilize this for Bible correspondence courses or other sort of survey style questions that they put out. We've helped administer surveys for both the Marshall Project for Google, for LinkedIn, for a lot of medium and smaller organizations as well, to really kind of get a gather for how learners are interacting with their materials, how they're maybe wanting to interact with future materials, or maybe just getting more kind of back and forth interactions with a material, just like what we saw with News Inside, where responses from the inside can be shared with those on the outside for more incarcerated men and women to read that in those future issues. So real quick, we talked on courses, we talked on these interactive resources. We're going to jump into the last item, which is these learning resources that we have. And I'll hand it over to Megan here. And this is one that you could see either it being a freestanding audio item, freestanding video item, or a freestanding reading item. And these are going to be something that we can put into the platform to let learners interact in more of like a library-based system. So here we got Ear Hustle podcast, which is composed of about 13 seasons. And we've gotten these seasons loaded up for Ear Hustle. So that way learners can either pick and choose which episode they want to listen to, or they can go through the whole series if they want to. Again, these could be standalone items. These could be part of a larger collection. But we bring these materials onto the platform as well as a way to bring more of the internet and more rehabilitative and educational and inspirational materials to incarcerated men and women as a way to bring wider forms of, I guess, that rehabilitation to these same folks. So a lot of these items, of course, don't tie back to lesson objectives. They don't have outcomes associated with them, but they certainly, for anyone who might have listened to Ear Hustle or other things sort of around this ethos, or even just general books or anything like that, we could all probably see the connection that this has to looking at positive outcomes that this could lead to incarcerated people. So that was a very quick way to kind of go through a lot that's on our platform. There's a lot more I could say. There's a lot more we could kind of go through and showcase on here. But again, I want to, in the interest of time, I'm going to hand it over to Megan to talk more about on the editor side of things. And if we have any extra time before we break and hand it back to Father Dustin, we'll talk on the analytics side. But at least wanted to give you all a quick crash course of what the learner side looks like first. Megan, I'll hand it to you.
Thanks, John. I'll provide a very brief demo of how our Adovo editor looks and works. This is the tool that we use on the back end to essentially rebuild all coursework and those interactive resources natively into our system. And this is done for a number of reasons, one of which is really ensuring the security and integrity of the content. And so when all of the content is built within our system, it becomes much easier to make it available to all the facilities we're serving. And so if we look at that Rising Strong course that we looked at from the learner's perspective, in order to build it within our system, we can come into the Adovo editor, and it's a very simple and user-friendly tool that replicates much like a drag and drop. So you can add lessons, you can edit the course information, and then within the various pages, you have all of these page items on the right-hand side to help you really customize the coursework to make a really unique user experience that reflects not only your organization's identity and message, but also ensures that learners are meaningfully able to engage with your content. And we offer a host of articles, resources, videos, and guidance through our knowledge base. And then our content support team is always happy to help folks to think about the different ways that content can be adapted. Thinking through some of those questions, such as how would I convert a PDF text-based correspondence course into something that can be fully digital? And again, for sake of time, we won't go too deep into all of that, but just showing how the editor side of everything looks. You can click to add in your different titles. And if you wanted to add text, images, PDFs, audio, and video, all of those multimedia items are able to be added. And then we get down to those quiz questions that we saw that can be used for tracking learner engagement to ensure that they're meaningfully connecting with the content. And it's also helpful when we look at their achievements for their certification and their transcripts. And so as John mentioned, we can add the option for the answer to be marked as either correct or incorrect. We can add in feedback either for the question as a whole or for each individual response option within our multiple choice quiz questions. And then we also have Likert style scale questions if we're thinking of something more like a survey where it auto-populates some of the more common Likert style quiz questions. We can also add in true and false, multi-select, open response, and fill in the blank. With these open response questions, our system uses a lightweight version of machine learning to evaluate a learner's typed response to help keep them on track. And so they'll have 3 opportunities to write in a meaningful response. And we can, again, provide answer feedback here, determine whether or not the question should be scored, and then what is the minimum criteria for the answer length. And having this option of whether the question is scored or not is helpful when we start thinking of the different ways we want folks to engage with our content. In some cases, we are looking for a right or wrong response, so we'd want it scored. In other cases, we may want them to do more introspective and reflective work where it is very open-ended, and so it doesn't necessarily align with the outcomes and objectives, but it's still a meaningful part of the course. This same tool can be used to create courses, interactive resources, surveys, and standalone assessments. And then we have a slightly different process for uploading those standalone resources. So this would be things like the Ear Hustle podcast, for example. When we have videos, audios, or PDFs that don't exist within an interactive element, we use a simple spreadsheet to essentially share the required data. So it would be a link to the resource, title, an image, and a description. And then our team is able to download, review, upload, and publish the materials either to a specific site or nationally. And I'll pause there and see, John, if we have a moment to get into data or if we should pass it over to...
I think we got a few minutes, and I think it's helpful to answer probably some of the questions here in the chat. And if we have time at the end, we can round back to data, which is always something I think is more secondary. I think there's been a lot of great questions in the chat, and I think to clarify some of the broader ways in which we operate and work within jails and prisons. And I know there's been some questions on the tablets, costs associated with that, costs associated with our platform. Broadly speaking, again, we are a device agnostic platform that works with all the different tablet vendors in jails and prisons. So the 2 most common ones that I'm sure most of you have heard or have run into is going to be Securus and Viapath. Viapath is formerly GTL, so they're one and the same. Those 2 organizations control about 80% of the corrections market, telecommunications, and then thus tablets. Between them, they have over 1 million tablets deployed within jails and prisons, which were live in about 600,000 to 700,000 of their tablets today, with more coming. Because we're a device agnostic platform, though, that's operating independently as a nonprofit outside of all these organizations, we've made our platform available to not only Securus and to Viapath, but to IC Solutions, to ATG, to Tech Friends, to a lot of other smaller and medium partners within the jail and prison space, ensuring that if a provider, let's say, changes tablets and moves from one place to another, the same instance of Adovo continues forward within that institution. So learners never really lose access to Adovo as long as we're working with that tablet provider, which we're looking to do with every tablet provider. I know there was a question specifically as well that Chandra, I know you had regarding costs associated with this. And there was some costs regarding access to this as well. Most tablet vendors are now moving to a 1-to-1 ratio where every incarcerated individual gets access to a tablet. And they're doing so and at no cost to the incarcerated learner, with them looking to then monetize the tablet through communications, selling entertainment, and selling other services that are outside of our purview. We work with all those vendors to, again, bring in the educational, vocational, rehabilitative content to our platform and continue to grow our library to incarcerated learners, having our platform live in a free section of their tablets. So in that way, nobody ever has to pay, no incarcerated person ever has to pay for our platform. We do have costs associated with uploading content to our platform, depending on how much content you're looking to upload and what you're looking to upload. As I've said to other folks as well, there's some organizations we've worked with for a long time, or some organizations that have brought really great curriculums on that we waive costs for. Typically, those costs are reserved for individuals and organizations who are looking to bring in a large influx of content. That's going to take our time and our team's ability to review that content, to get that content organized and uploaded to our system, to then get the approvals from facilities to deploy that content and distribute that content and run the operations of our business. So we do that at a low cost on 4 different tiers, and we'll send out information about all that at the end of this call. And that's really just different costs associated with how much content you want to upload and how frequent you want to upload content. But do know that if you do work closely with a specific jail or prison and you're working within those institutions, we're happy to upload your content at no cost specifically to those institutions and get your materials digitally to those learners that you're serving in person at those facilities. So again, really those costs that we're levying is just a way to help keep us in operation, and it helps cover our costs in having to go through the process of getting all of your materials ready for a national distribution. So we'd love to speak with all of you more about your goals and what you're looking to do to bring your materials either specific to, again, those that you're working with in your institutions or in your community, or if you're looking to bring your content nationally as well. We will be sure to share more of our information and our welcome packet for you all to reach back out to Megan and myself to continue these conversations, ask those nuanced questions, and see what's going to make sense for us to be able to help you reach your goals, again, through digital distribution. So there's more questions in the chat that I'll look through, and Megan and I will try to answer as both Sister Dolores and Sister Christina are answering. But again, in the interest of time, I think I'm going to hand it back over to you, Father Dustin, and we'll continue on. And we'll have a Q&A at the end of this where we can hopefully get to more pressing questions you all have.
That's great. Thanks so much, John and Megan. And while, yeah, as you can see, it was hard to keep up with the questions in the chats, but you've already addressed some of the big ones there, John. I appreciate that. I actually do have one question. I mean, some of the material that you pointed us to, the Marshall Project and Ear Hustle, I may be a skeptic in terms of working in prisons in the South, but it's hard for me to even fathom that DOCs in the South would allow Marshall Project and Ear Hustle be readily available for those that are incarcerated in these facilities. But I would love that if that were the case. Is that type of material pretty much widespread and available to prisons throughout the country?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a little bit just, again, on the approval process for content, I'll share the link for our approval process as well, what we do. We take on the first pass of all review and publication of content to our platform. And all the institutions that we work with, save for literally 2 of them, trust us on that process, and they don't do any second checks on that. There's 2 agencies we work with where they do a second pass and they want to review content before we publish it. And there are certain institutions, I'll use Florida Department of Corrections as an example, because we are going to be launching in all the prisons within the Florida Department of Corrections in the next, I'm going to say, few weeks is what it should be. We'll see if that holds, but before the end of the year, they definitely will. And they have some pretty strict requirements on what content they do or don't allow. And so we're actively reviewing their requirements against things like the Marshall Project to see if we can put that out there. And correctional agencies all have the ability through a facility administrative application called Insight that they get access to request any content be removed. So if there's something that they see as not conducive to rehabilitation in their facility, they can request for us to remove it, and we'll go through and we'll do just that. So we take on that process so then you all can focus on building the best content and being mindful of helping incarcerated learners grow, while we take on the minutia of doing the review and working with the bureaucracy to get all that approved.
Well, that's great. Well, this is really impressive. Thank you, John. And we'll come back and feel free to ask any questions, comments, put them in the chat box, and we'll come back to that here in a couple of minutes. But now we would like to move to both Sister Dolores and Sister Christina, who I think can address some of the more specific kind of Catholic content and materials available for those involved in Catholic ministries on the inside. Sister Dolores is the program director for Catholic International University's Prison Ministry program and performs the role of digital content specialist, building continuing education catechetical content. Sister Dolores became a Eucharist servant of the 11th hour after spending 30+ years as an IT infrastructure contractor, as a project manager, program manager, and director on large federal government contracts, working in partnership with Edovo and building content on their platform, has allowed Catholic International University to reach far more incarcerated learners than we could have otherwise. And just hearing their John and Megan's presentation, that's not hard for me to imagine. Sister Christina is a sister of St. Joseph, who has worked for the Department of Corrections the past 2 years at a medium security prison on the outskirts of St. Louis, Missouri. She has firsthand knowledge of how tablets are and can be utilized inside the prison setting. So thank you, Sister Dolores, Sister Christina, for joining us. And now I'll hand it over to you, Sister Dolores.
Okay, thank you very much, Father Dustin. It has been 6+ years since Catholic International University partnered with Adovo to begin building content. And it was through this relationship and the relationship with the Order of Malta and collaborating with the Order of Malta to build content. We have been able to build 90 of the continuing education courses, and the first one being deployed in March of 2018, and it was the Gospel of St. Matthew. And since then, we have deployed 90 of those courses, that continuing education, and of those 90, 23 have been rebuilt as Spanish courses. And we have also partnered with the Order of Malta in partnering with Gatekeepers, which is a re-entry program. It's a 14-part program. And we initiated that in 2022, in March of 2022. And then in 2023, in September, we went live with a Spanish version of it. And to date, we have had over 6,000 of the incarcerated learners complete that program. And we've had feedback that in some instances, people have really been given hope that there is an opportunity when they get out to really have a chance with getting their life in order and being successful in being out. We've also partnered with other groups like Hello Company, and we've put up some of their audio files, and many of the ones that I have now ready to go up have been overlaid on images to create MP4s to let the learner be able to see an image as well as hear the content. And then we've also partnered with other organizations to get content up. And it has been 6 years now. And to date, we just hit a 2.4 million lessons started. That doesn't mean they've been completed, but 2.1 million have successfully been completed. And from May of 2023 to April of 24, we had approximately 18,000 learners take one or more than one multiple level course. So that's just a little bit of where we're at. It has been very fruitful. And we continue to hope to be very, engaging in different types of content and building it on the Adovo platform. Because we have gotten some feedback, and the feedback has been from different learners saying that now they have hope. And during the COVID, when no one could get into prisons, we did some work for the Archdiocese of Philadelphia through the Order of Malta. And we've also done some other courses and have had feedback on that it has made a difference in the lives of our learners. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Dolores. Now turn it over to you, Sister Christina.
Hey, thank you. I'm going to speak really from the user side of things, and I can only really speak to the state of Missouri. Each state, as some of our comments are suggesting, each state is really different in terms of what it allows and how they structure things. I did speak with an incarcerated person who lives via his tablet last week, and he said, I asked him, like, told him I was going to do this and asked him for a quote. And he said, tablets are an absolute godsend. They make so much available. And so he could literally, he could speak for hours about what he all loves about the tablets. In our prison, the men are given a tablet. They are a loaner, and then from there, it is their responsibility to maintain it. The three highest commodities in our prison are a fan, because we don't have air conditioning, a tablet, and then a TV, in that order. Tablets, if they are broken, lost, or stolen, cost $140 to $160 to replace. So we have an inequity in the sense of incarcerated persons who are more vulnerable lose their tablets one way or another and no longer are able to access content, especially if they don't have someone who is able to provide them with the money to be able to replace their tablet. The other thing that I'll speak about, which some of our comments really were getting at, is in terms of the content. It is really up to each state what they allow to be posted on the tablets in their state. So speaking for the state of Missouri, there's actually there is some Catholic content, but it really pales compared to the Christian content that is available that is not Catholic, the Christian general community. And for the Missouri prisons, there is not a catechism that is available. There is a Baltimore catechism that is available. The Douay-Rheims translation of the Bible is what is put on the tablets as the Catholic version of the Bible. EWTN, liturgy of the liturgy of the Word, is provided not on the day of, but a day after or a week after, and not the full Mass, just the liturgy of the Word. And so in the Missouri prisons, the men do not have, or the men and women do not have access to a Mass on the tablets. Now, I'm sure some states do. I'm just kind of sharing what is allowed at this point in our system. And ultimately, it's on me, actually, and others like me, to reach out to the state coordinator of the chaplains about how to get that rectified a bit. And so I hope to actually work on that some in this upcoming year. So they are a godsend. There is, as you could kind of see with Ndovo's presentation, there is just a wealth of content that's available. They emphasize, we saw the religious content, but there's also just songs and just the ability to touch the outside world. So the tablets are really a godsend for the guys because they're able to download their favorite songs. They're able to purchase movies. Those that have the resources, they can purchase movies in addition to the free content. They're able to use it as a way to really connect with the outside world. And it's not uncommon when I'm walking in the prison for guys to be on a tablet. If we're walking as a group from one building to another, sometimes I'll turn to a guy and I'll start talking to him and he'll go like this. Oh, I'm sorry, chap. I was talking on the phone to my mom. They use the tablets even to, make telephone calls. They can be talking on the phone to whoever they want to while they're walking to chow. So they've also got the downside of technology that you and I sort of experience outside of prison, where you can get into your own world and not even have to pay attention to anyone else because you're just in your own little tablet world, your own little smartphone world. So good, bad, and different. I think overall it's a wonderful thing, but it does also bring about some additional safety and security issues and inequity issues. At this point, last thing I'll say, at this point, our prisons, our administration, the warden, things like that, they put out official announcements on the tablets. What happens if you don't have a tablet because yours has been broken, lost, or stolen? So there are inequities that are just inherent with the incarceral system that have flowed forward to the tablets as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Christina. And thank you, Sister Dolores, for being with us here as well. Now we're going to kind of move into some questions and answers, and a lot of these questions and answers have already been addressed on the chat box, which I think all of you will find very helpful, even just reviewing some of those questions and answers that were raised. And I appreciate, Sister Christina, you speaking to the inequities, because I go into a lot of solitary confinement dorms and on death row, and that's where you oftentimes see the most inequities and the problems. And obviously there's always going to be problems where there's technology and where there are human systems as well. But by and large, I do think so much of the positive, the good that these tablets have brought, which is what I hear from guys, which is that they see people on the outside offering programming, having these talk shows, positive messages, whatever they may be, and they begin to think that people on the outside are actually do care about them. And that means a ton. There's no way that we can ever fully take in just how much it matters to someone on the inside to know that there are people on the outside thinking about them, developing content and curriculums and courses for them in their transitioning back into society, but also for those that are lifers and those that are on death row to know that that programming is available. So that's a godsend. My question, just to start, one basic question, and this may have been addressed a little bit earlier as well, but just to kind of reorient ourselves as though we're someone on the inside, and maybe Sister Christina, you might be able to speak to this, or John, Megan, Sister Dolores, whoever. When someone gets a tablet, they turn the tablet on, is it comparable to say it's like getting a TV today? When you buy a TV, you turn the TV on, and you already see these apps and different channels, streaming devices that are available, and you kind of go from there. Is this kind of what happens when someone turns on their tablet, they've registered or whatever they need to do to log in, and they see Indovo or Pando, these different apps pop up that they can then click on? Can one of you maybe give us just a somewhat of a descriptive sense of what our sisters and brothers on the inside experience when they first log into their tablets?
I was answering a specific question in the chat, and I said it's sort of like a dummy version of our iPad. And so when they turn it on, then it has these apps on the screen. It does not include a Google app for them to surf the internet. So it's like a dummy version, a dummified version, a simplified version of what we might think of with an iPad. But it literally has apps like Pando and an app to access music. So they have sort of their own version of access that, like, we might go to Spotify, whereas they would go to Pando or to Indovo. So there's these different apps that allow them to access the content, just like you and I might see. And then, of course, you've got different interfaces. You use the Fire tablet or the iPad. So it's kind of like its own version of a Fire tablet or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And do you, perhaps John or Megan, you can address this question, like, because I saw it pop up multiple times in the chat. What is the difference between Indovo and Pando? Just because these are the two that have been popping up here on the chat box.
Yeah, I could speak to that one because we've spoken with, and I just posted something regarding Pando as well. We've spoken with the folks over at Pando, and our understanding for them is that similar to if anyone's familiar with Prison Fellowship, for example, where they have sort of their own programs that they're looking to run, Pando specifically has a digital application that they have made available, in my understanding, to those outside in the public, as well as a version of that to incarcerated people as well. They're distributing their application similar to how we're distributing our application. The difference being, though, is they're focused more on Christian faith-based content. They very well might have educational, vocational, rehabilitative content with more of a Christian-based lens to how they're looking to do that, where we're working with providers from all backgrounds and all faiths and sort of all different competencies to try to bring just as much educational, vocational, rehabilitative materials forward as we can, with the ultimate goal from our side, at least, to, again, be providing those outcomes to incarcerated learners through our platform. So again, that's looking at aligning our programs to things like earned time credit programs that are legislatively approved at certain states or counties, looking to have proctored exams come in for things like GED or HiSET or high school equivalency, entry-level college credit being awarded to learners, certifications from Google or AWS or other tech companies like that, or more in the vocational track from ServSafe, things of that nature. So Pando very well could have a bunch of that as well too. And I certainly don't discourage anybody from working with them if that's a way for you to get your content out to more incarcerated men and women. You really just got to be thinking about what are your goals when you're trying to either you personally or your organization reach incarcerated men and women, or if you have content that you think is really meaningful to bring to incarcerated men and women. I think both organizations, working both with Pando and with us, is a way to get more materials out there, because they very well might be in facilities that we're not in today, and vice versa for them. So you got to really just kind of round back to think about what your goals are when you're thinking about digital distribution to incarcerated people.
Excellent. So let me ask a question. Again, John, it's open to anyone, but I think, John, you've already addressed this question in the chat box as well. So say I'm here at Joseph House, we have a reentry organization, residential community, and say we want to, we're a small nonprofit, not a massive budget, but we have say content on post-release, and we think that some of our guys can provide testimonials to those on the inside on what to anticipate when they're released. And we could think of multiple other types of Catholic organizations, ministries that would be interested in sharing their content, providing a podcast or providing educational material. What are the basic steps that they would take, say they wanted to approach Edovo to provide that content? What's the kind of cost involved? What are the first steps that one would take?
Yeah, the best way to get that process started, and we'll include some of this information if we can send a follow-up. We got a nice welcome packet that we can send to everyone that kind of summarizes what we discussed and has our contact information sort of at the end, where typically the best way to get in contact is to email us at content@adovo.org. That's going to be the best place to get that into our queue for review. Megan and myself are both in there, so we'll see your responses. And then from there, really telling us, what's your goal with looking to reach incarcerated learners? Do you really just want to work with a specific institution that you are already doing work within? Do you want to reach, Father Dustin, in your example, do you want to reach just one prison in Florida? Do you want to reach every prison in Florida? Do you want to go national with your content? Do you think it's applicable in that sense? And then from there, we look to get a conversation probably set up with you after we kind of review your content to get an understanding for, is it going to be best built as a course on our platform? Is this really just one of those learning resources? Do you have hundreds of things you want to look to add? Is it really just you all kind of getting in there, similar to what Sister Dolores has been doing all these years, building courses consistently over the years and getting those published nationally for learners? Because based upon some of the answers to those questions, there may or may not be fees associated with those. As sort of an example, if you're looking to just get content within a prison in Florida that you're already working within, or the DOC of Florida, we likely wouldn't charge you any cost with that if you're going to go in, make your curriculums, and you're looking to digitize it. If you're coming through, and I can use the example with EWTN because we're currently in conversation with bringing a large amount of their materials to our platform. because they want to bring thousands of items to our platform, there's a cost associated with our time and energy to have to review that content, get that content ready, and then do the approval process for distribution in all the correctional facilities we work in. And that goes for what we distribute today and all the correctional facilities we deploy tomorrow. So there's some finer points to those questions, but really I wouldn't let anybody think that cost needs to be prohibitive to start, because again, the fees that we do charge, if we do have to charge a fee, are on the lower end. And we always can find ways in which we can either find alternative funding strategies for you or work with you to find ways to get it in if funding is an obstacle. And again, those things are in place just because of the volume and reach that we have. We're having hundreds of providers reach out to us, and we're doing our best to bring as much forward as we can, and we want to keep bringing more. And so this is just one way in which we can keep expanding what we do to then bring more content to incarcerated men and women.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, that I would imagine that a number of you watching might be interested in taking those first steps in providing content and courses, perhaps. Before we kind of bring the Q&A session here to an end and move into announcements, I just wanted to give Sister Dolores, if you had any, because you did this in a lot of ways with the courses, if you wanted to add any last thoughts or perhaps even a note of encouragement to the different folks on the webinar today.
Well, I know that the content is out there, it is being used, and we get some very positive feedback. And really, we want to get as much Catholic content out there as possible to reach everyone, and to really, it's a way to evangelize. And I most certainly keep reaching out to different groups to get additional content so that Catholic International University can sponsor it and put it up. So I would say to anyone that has content, we have incarcerated learners that really want the content, and they go in, they may look at it, no, I'm not interested, but then they may come back to it another time, and they are searching for content that will bring them closer to Christ. Don't know if that's what you're looking for, but I know that the more we can get out there, the more we are doing what our Lord wants.
Thank you for that, Sister Dolores. And I know initially I had a lot of concerns about tablets in terms of what ministry, and that I was thinking, well, are correctional facilities and jails going to just simply make it more difficult for in-person relational ministry and overly rely on educational or tablets technology? In other words, saying, well, look, you don't need to come in and do RCIA or catechesis anymore. We provide it. They can go to Pando, they can go to wherever. And that maybe that was a way of finding a way to kind of dismiss or make it a little bit more difficult to actually get inside the walls. And I still have a little bit of that concern, but that is far outweighed by everything I've heard today in terms of programming, the courses, the engagement, surveys. That to me is mind-blowing. That's happening, and that's just such great work that all of you are doing, both those going inside, Sister Christina, what you're doing as a chaplain, what John, Megan, Sister Dolores, what you're doing by providing extraordinary content to our sisters and brothers on the inside. So thank you for the extraordinary work that you're doing, I hear it from the guys on the inside, how much it means to be able to have access to this type of programming. So again, thank you all for joining us, our panel, those in our audience, so many different ministries and organizations that come to us in these webinars that are doing incredible work on behalf of our sisters and brothers. And so on this feast day of St. Maximilian Kolbe, may his intercessions continue to bless us and our ministries to our sisters and brothers that are incarcerated. God bless you all, and see you all next time. Take care.